Arrivals at Tilbury.
For decades, Britain has welcomed generations of immigrants from the Commonwealth, many of whom have served in our armed forces. Today, this tradition is still alive and well, but there's a problem. For some of these soldiers, once their time in the armed forces has come to an end, they face a new battle, one to remain in the United Kingdom.
10 years I've been fighting this battle in the Home Office. Every single day I think about it.
Often these are some of the lowest paid troops in our armed forces. Arguably some would say some of the bravest because they're on the front line. And it's shocking that they can't exercise their right to stay here.
Tens of thousands of us have perished, and some may even die for a country that we consider value us less than others.
So what's going wrong? There are many Commonwealth soldiers who feel like they're being treated unfairly by the Home Office. Britain is still a place of opportunity, but for many Commonwealth soldiers and their families, when they leave the UK Armed Forces, instead of being met with the visas they need, they're being met with injustice. Across Britain, you'll meet members of our armed forces who are not originally from this country, but hail from around the world. The Royal British Legion estimates that nearly 5,000 soldiers in the British Armed Forces are originally from Commonwealth nations. Many of these soldiers now face a legal battle with the Home Office in order to remain in the United Kingdom indefinitely. And some of these soldiers are now using online petitions as a way to promote their cause and to ask for help. Trevor Rennie came to Britain from Dominica. A proud family man, Trevor was a reservist for 6 years before a single phone call changed everything.
I received a phone call from my army commander, and he said that I no longer could be in the army anymore. So I said, what's the reason? He said the Home Office called and said I'm illegal. So that was very shocking to me, and it really broke me down to pieces. The Home Office says, well, the HM forces part-time reservists, they said that doesn't belong to the army. Majority of people says, well, regular army or army reserve, it doesn't make any difference.
Trevor and hundreds of Commonwealth soldiers fear deportation, but they don't have to suffer alone. Zita Holborn, co-founder of Black Activists Rising Against Cuts, is just one of several campaigners fighting the corner of Commonwealth soldiers. She uses charity work and art to highlight the pain deportation is having on families.
When you serve in the armed forces and then you're discharged or you finish your service, there is nothing in place really to support individuals into going back into society and living as a civilian. And if you have the issue of the hostile environment and your immigration status to add to that, you're a Commonwealth soldier and therefore you're having to fight what's happening to you in terms of your immigration status. You're being criminalised, that's going to increase your stress levels. And if you're having to deal with trauma and then you're having to deal with fighting your case, immigration case on top of that, you may not be able to grasp what it is you need to do. And if nobody's advising you and supporting you through that, and you're just trying to get from one day to the next and survive, it's going to be really hard and really tough.
For Trevor, his battle's a stressful one, just by looking at the sheer amount of letters he's received from the government.
See the date?
The 12th of September 2014.
With my photo, but I'm not allowed to work. I need to report to the police station.
In this letter, they give one reason for you for being detained, or you being liable to be detained. It says that you're a person without leave. You are likely to be removed at any point. Despite pleading with the British government, Trevor can't lead a normal life. Not allowed to work and provide for his family, once a month Trevor cycles to his local police station and meets with immigration officers to sign in. First detained by the government in 2016, Trevor's wary of these monthly visits.
I have the kind of fear in me. Even while I'm walking out of the police station, I even feel like someone is going to snatch me by behind still. That's the fear I have.
And one of the biggest things that Trevor dreads is being separated once again from his home and family. His experience at Campsfield Detention Centre is one that's forever burned in his memory.
I was in Campsfield for 17 days, from the 2nd of December till the 19th of December. I thought I was going to spend Christmas in there. At that moment, and my body, my hands was so cold, sweat. I asked the judge to release me. I had to go to court, but the court is like a Skype. So they called me in that day and she refused me. If a man is married to a wife, I mean it's both of you together. And sometimes she tell me, oh, don't worry about it, we will get through this, we'll get through this. And sometimes I say to her, we always say we'll get through this, we'll get through this. But it's just going in circles and circles and circles. We spend over £7,000 in solicitor's fees alone. And she's still paying credit card bills still.
Legal fees aren't the only financial burden for Commonwealth servicemen, which the Royal British Legion are well aware of. With a number of successful campaigns, they now have a new mission. Launched in March, #StopTheServiceCharge will address one of the biggest issues facing Commonwealth soldiers, the rising price of visa fees.
We were noticing that more Commonwealth soldiers and veterans that came to this country to fight in our armed forces, upon leaving, were being faced with really high visa fee charges to apply for indefinite leave to remain. We believe is no way to thank them for their service. So they've come to this country and they've sacrificed quite a lot to be here, and potentially they may even have to pay the ultimate sacrifice, and yet upon leaving they're having to pay huge fees to apply to stay in the country. Quite a lot of our casework is quite complex. You unpick how they got there, and it can be because they've had to pay these fees, they've put them on a credit card. We had a case of someone who then ended up having to live in their car because they couldn't afford their rent and stuff like that. We paid off the credit card fees and he was able to then get himself back on his feet.
The campaign has turned heads in Whitehall, where a real difference can be made.
We've got a range of MPs that have contacted us about this, being supportive from a range of backgrounds. So Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, SNP and Green Party. Some of them have signed an EDM that's been tabled by Ed Davey. There's quite a lot of support, which we're quite pleased with.
The pain Trevor and Commonwealth soldiers are experiencing is starting to turn heads, not just in Whitehall, but from across the country. However, the problem is only going to get worse. Data obtained from a Freedom of Information request we sent to the Ministry of Defence came back and told us that in the past 3 years, recruitment of soldiers from the Commonwealth nations is relatively low. The Armed Forces plans to significantly increase its numbers of Commonwealth soldiers. By the end of 2019, recruitment may be 6 times higher than in 2018. This could open the floodgates for more soldiers facing a battle to stay in the UK. In Banbury, Oxfordshire, one former Commonwealth soldier has started campaigning on the issue. Tamba Conte from Sierra Leone didn't have to pay visa fees, but once he left his regiment for a regular life in Britain, he had to pay for naturalisation.
Oh, I had to pay, I think everything that I had to pay, probably between 700 to 800 pounds. And I think for me it was a painful experience that I have to spend that money. I never felt good that serving this country, sacrificing, laying down my life for this nation, I should have to pay to be a citizen of this nation. But the truth about the army, for most people, is not actually the job that is the problem, it's other issues they face. Army officers basically have very little or no clue about immigration policies, so they are unable to provide help. When we're in service, when we're serving, we're exempt from all immigration control. But when you're about to leave, that exemption is taken out from you, and you have to then apply for yourself. The exemption is done by the MOD, but the moment you finish your service, they have nothing to do with that, which I think is really sad, because it just shows that it's only when we are reaping something from you, we have value for you.
But there were times in the army when Tamba felt valued, like on his 25th birthday.
I got a nice card. That's a piece of paper. The folks it was fun. I still kept it up to today, It's one of the most memorable thing I had from the army.
But Tamba wasn't so fond of these letters.
And I actually got a letter from the Home Office, despite having naturalized, that, you have 28 days to apply for this or you'll be deported. And I think it's a standard thing.
And that letter was incorrect, because you did have the right to...
Yeah, well, I just have a laugh. I said, well, we know the Home Office having problems with not knowing who is who.
Many Commonwealth veterans feel alone in their battle to remain in the United Kingdom, but there are some MPs who are fighting their corner. Politicians from across the Commons and the country have pledged their support to an early day motion, a proposal which is hopefully the first step in waiving what they label exorbitant visa fees against Commonwealth veterans. And I went to meet the MP who's leading the motion. Liberal Democrat Sir Edward Davey has met first-hand some of the veterans whose lives have been crippled by the fees and is campaigning to see them waived.
So,
When you're ready, Fraser, if you want to ask a question.
Sure. So what question would you like to ask?
The first one's about the early day motion.
Yeah. So can you briefly tell me about the early day motion and why you decided to put it forward?
well, I met some Fijian veterans of the British Armed Forces. I heard their case and I was frankly appalled. And I wanted to bring it to the attention of other members of the House of Commons, which is how you use an early day motion to try to garner support.
Is this just a revenue raiser from the government, or do you think that it may actually be part of a wider policy such as hostile environment?
Well, the Home Office have been increasing their fees for a number of years now, and no one is against fees in all circumstances. But more broadly, there needs to be some fees, but it does look like they've been increasing their fees by a dramatic amount that's totally unjustified of the costs of processing, and therefore it does look as if this government is using fees to discourage people from applying, even for things like asylum, and I do think that that is wrong.
Edward Davey isn't the only MP demanding change. Conservative politician Richard Graham recently asked Home Secretary Sajid Javid to scrap the fees.
Current immigration requirements oblige Commonwealth servicemen and women to pay £2,389 to apply for indefinite leave to remain after 4 years' service, or almost £10,000 for a family of 4. This considerable cost does not reflect the nation's respect for those prepared in extremis to give their lives for our country. I therefore written a cross-party letter with the Honourable Member from Bridgend, signed by 130 Members of Parliament, to the Home Secretary to seek his support to abolish these visa fees.
This is something that Tamba's already been campaigning for. He's written to politicians about the rising fees, including cabinet ministers. Who's responded to you and which ones pleased you?
I've had an acknowledgement that the Right Honourable Gavin Williamson, the Secretary of State for Defence, I've received my correspondence, but I've not had any reply.
If Gavin Williamson was here right in your flat right now, what would you say to him?
Well, first of all, I'll tell him that we are not happy with what is going on and we are not being treated rightly. And I believe that it is his responsibility to ensure that we feel, not only we feel valued, but we're treated in a more humane manner, and to understand that this is actually a national shame.
This is one of the letters that Tamba wrote to Gavin Williamson. However, since the making of this documentary, Mr. Williamson has been dismissed and replaced by Penny Mordaunt. Despite this public outcry, the government's position on its visa fees remains unchanged, regardless of the MOD's new recruitment drive. Despite calls for the Commonwealth visa fees to be waived, the government have been slow to address this issue. Over the past few months, I've reached out to the UK Visa and Immigration Services, the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence. None were able to meet with me personally to discuss this issue, but the Home Office did release this statement.
The government highly values the service of all members of Her Majesty's forces, including Commonwealth nationals. We are committed to upholding our obligations under the Armed Forces Covenant to ensure that no one who is serving, or who has served, or their family members are disadvantaged as a result of their service. Income from fees charged for immigration and nationality applications plays a vital role in our ability to run a sustainable immigration and nationality system and minimise the burden on the taxpayer. The Home Office reviews fees on a yearly basis.
But has the Home Office considered the emotional impact these barriers are having on Commonwealth soldiers? Zita Holborn doesn't think so.
People are being used and then spat out. So you're good enough to be called British, you're in the British Armed Forces when they need you and they want you to risk your life and put your life on the line to fight for the country, but the minute they don't want you anymore, you're no good.
The British government insists that its immigration system is sustainable and that the visa fees plays a vital role in maintaining it. But at what cost do these fees have upon Commonwealth soldiers and their families? Campaign groups like Barrack, the Royal British Legion, and now politicians show a hunger for change. The question now is whether the government will act quick enough before more lives are affected.